So did you see this? Since we just finished, I'm sure you did because it was all over the news. The Taliban new restrictions and laws in Afghanistan. Anybody, you didn't see this? Okay, so
There was a slight mention.
I don't know.
That's not.
I honestly don't watch the news.
I don't have TV.
okay. So basically, I'm sure we're talking about Islam, Sharia law,
Right.
the Taliban. We know them. We've heard of them. After the U.S. pulled out, and they continued to assert their control. The latest this week is very strict. If you are a woman and you go out in public, no skin should be shown. You should be completely covered. Used to, sometimes you could show your face, and you're not allowed. Your voice cannot be heard. Do not speak in public. Interesting that we talked about it.
But I mean, they can't barter in the market or either. Oh, it says singing or reading. It doesn't say.
So it's pretty strict.
Yeah.
Maybe in the market, maybe if it's all, I don't know, but it's.
That's interesting.
It was an interesting little blurb that came out. Now I was going to look up some other countries. This is the extreme, as we said.
Yeah.
This isn't the norm all across the Islamic world, but certainly in the more fundamentalist places, this is the reality. I thought it was interesting that was in the news. Okay. Maybe it was just
Part of
me.
reality.
Hinduism. Here we go. Hindu is an interesting word. It literally means from India, which is odd. I didn't know that. We think of it as a religion, but the word started as more a geographical locator. The Sanskrit word is Sindhu, but the people that came over and were trying to describe this group of people couldn't pronounce S's, so it became Hindu. And it references particularly the river, the Indus River, or sometimes called the Sindhu River, which this is modern day, just for the record. The river is mostly of it in Pakistan and China. This little part right here is in this little nodule that is of India. Well, you can see how it sort of forms a bit of a barrier with the Himalayan mountains here. You got Nepal and Bhutan and all, and then the Indian Ocean. So India, as a subcontinent, or as you would think of it, is naturally sort of isolated. And so originally Hinduism or Hindu wasn't a word that meant a faith. It was about a region. And even to this day, I think Hinduism, if you check, you'll find largely concentrated here. It is a very unique part of the world, I think, because of the geographical features. There are some that say the word Hindu relates to the HI, Himalayas on the north, and then the ocean on the south. I've seen a few who are Hindu clerics or whatever saying that. So the idea of the word relates to a region, and what happens in this region is this faith, this religion kind of becomes the dominant one. It's the third largest in the world, Hinduism, behind Christianity, Islam, and then Hinduism. Part of it is there are a lot of people that live here. There are a whole lot of people that live in India, very densely populated.
That is predominant.
About 80% of the people of India are Hindu. So I'm going to mute a couple of people here because it's going to mess with our recording and the like. So no offense, please. So anyway, what's the population of India? Over 1 billion now.
Yeah, it's 1 billion. It's been 1 billion for
several years. I don't know exactly. So 70+% of 1 billion is a lot of people.
Absolutely.
So we're talking about the word means regional, but the faith is largely regional. Most of the Hindus in the world are going to live right here. There's Hindus in America. There's Hindus all over. I'm not saying there are none, but the most of them are going to live right in the Indian subcontinent. So let's go through kind of our way of looking at this. We start by talking about ultimate concern, which is our way of, in a deistic faith, talking about their god or gods. And if we're talking about Hinduism,
Many.
we got some to talk about. The big boy is Brahma. Brahma is the god of creation. Brahma is the supreme reality, is one way of looking at Brahma, the underlying divine entity behind everything. If you remember when we talked theology, one of those words about God being the uncaused cause, Brahma is probably that idea applies to him. He's considered, as we said, the creator. If you're curious, a representation of Brahma. This is a statue, not a picture. 4 faces and supposed to be 6 arms. As I read about it, for some reason this statue only had 4. Maybe we just can't see the other 2. You'll find in Hinduism, these kind of idols are very predominant, very much a part and a factor of their faith. So Brahma is the top of the food chain, as it were, among the gods. Yet, ironically, there aren't many people or temples who directly worship Brahma. He's considered, now some people say it's because he made a mistake or sinned somewhere, and so it's his punishment that nobody's worshiping him. Others say that, for whatever reason, the idea that he's behind all things, that these other gods are emanations from him somehow. And so by worshiping them, you're worshiping Brahma. I don't know, but Brahma is kind of the creator. The second one I want to mention is Vishnu. You may have heard of Vishnu. Vishnu is the preserver. The name has in its name one who preserves, sustains, protects, pervades all creation. Vishnu is depicted this way, and you'll notice this is artistic, not an idol. But all of these zippity doodahs around here are avatars. They're not the blue men from the movie, for the record, or women from the movie. Avatars are these representations of certain gods, different forms or faces they take. You'll probably recognize one of Vishnu's avatars by the name of Krishna. Definitely probably know that name. Another one is Rama, 2 prominent avatars of Vishnu that are also worshipped in their own right. Obviously, we know about Hare Krishna, which is it is Hindu because of its relation, but it's kind of its own little special subcategory. We're not going to talk about that specifically tonight. And really, we could talk about any of these other gods. Avatars are kind of another thing, which is why we have so many gods that eventually we get to in Hinduism. The third of the gods, the third of the big 3 is Shiva. And this Shiva is the destroyer. So you got the creator, the preserver, and the destroyer. How's that for the Trinity? Actually, there's a word for it. I'll show it. It's trimurti is what they call these 3. So you see tri, and these are Sanskrit words transliterated into English. Sometimes the pronunciation is going to be horrible. So that's how this white boy would pronounce that word.
I think you're great.
So you see the idea that they have this trinity of gods as well. This is one picture of Shiva. A few things that typically see: the third eye is Shiva. There's a snake around Shiva's neck. There's a trident. There's a lot of interesting things that happen around Shiva. Yes.
Shiva has a beard, or isn't Shiva supposed to be a female?
These are all male. These are all considered male.
Oh, they're all male. Okay, thank you.
They all have female consorts that hang out with them.
Okay.
But all 3 of these
Shiva,
as we would think of it.
I always heard Shiva was female. Okay, you straighten up.
Shiva is
a male. Okay.
God of destruction. The interesting thing is there's the cycle of destruction and rebirth in Hinduism, which you're probably familiar with in various ways. We see that evidence in what we'll talk about with karma and reincarnation. There's death and rebirth, destruction and rebirth. And so that's why we have these kind of three gods, the Trimurti, or whatever the right pronunciation of that is. Shiva, like Vishnu, can take on different forms. There's one that's half male, half female. One side is Shiva, the other side is Parvati, who is another of the emanations or gods. So other of the people there that show up. So this is kind of the big three: Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. There are branches of Hinduism that focus on worship of Vishnu. There are branches of Hinduism that specifically focus on the worship of Shiva. They have their own little kind of sub-religions. The Vishnu worshippers are Vaishnavites, and the Shiva worshippers are Shaivists, or however. So this idea that, so Brahma doesn't have that for some reason, but these other two principal gods have particular strands of Hinduism that devote themselves to them, even though all of these gods. Now, I don't know if you can see, but you might see this symbol. It's also here. If you go back to our cover slide, it's this symbol. Does anybody know what this symbol is? Let me show it to you big. Don't cheat at home if you have the answer. There it is. There it is. That's the symbol. This one, what word is most associated with Hinduism? Om. Oh, that is Om. It's actually a three-syllable word. A-U-M, three syllables. Om, I guess, I don't know. Again, I'm not Hindu. I don't speak Sanskrit. It is thought to be the primordial sound from which the universe was created. This is the Big Bang, the sound for them, if we want to look at maybe a concept we understand, which is why many in Hinduism will chant this sound, because it puts them in touch with that primordial sound that's supposed to bring recreation, calmness, clarity, and all of that sort of thing to their mind. In doing that, somehow you're connecting yourself at a higher spiritual level of understanding just by chanting this very powerful word. The word itself, I say it's a word, it's a symbol actually. This isn't a language like a word like your Greek, Hebrew, it's a symbol. And so the dot at the top is typically how it is the moment of eternity becoming created. Somehow it represents creation. The little half moon or semicircle, it's the illusion that we live in that prohibits us from seeing the clarity and the purity of the initial creation. And then these three, I guess you'd call them half circles, curved lines, they represent the Trimurti, the three gods, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. And so they also can represent three states of consciousness, the state, the waking state, the unconscious state, and the dream state. Lots of symbolism in this particular word or three-syllable word, this powerful word that becomes a mantra, a chanted mantra. And so that's why it's a symbol. It's very, no matter where you go in Hinduism, what particular branch you shoot off on, this one word is thought to be the most powerful word of all. Now, I said those are the three main gods, but don't let that.
Oh, yeah.
This is 12, and there are probably that many more that we could list. I don't know if you know any of these. Krishna certainly is one that you would be familiar with. Ganesha is the elephant. If you see it, you might have seen that. So we've got, I just wrote the This is the goddess of prosperity, wealth, and good fortune. So now we have goddesses mixed in here. So that would be important. We got goddess of wisdom. Let me keep going. Rama is one of the avatars of Vishnu, like Krishna is. And so those two come from there. This is the monkey god, Hanuman. Don't know, we have monkeys and elephants. By that, I don't mean they're in charge of monkeys, but they're represented by a monkey. You know, this is that. Who else we got? Krishna, elephant. This is the god of war, the firstborn of Shiva, often having 6 heads. So, you know, weird stuff. Shakti is the ultimate female deity, for the record, if you're caring. There's a whole branch of Hinduism that focuses on the feminine, it's just Shaktism. So there you go. Durga, a warrior goddess. Sati is a wife of Shiva. Parvati is Shiva's loving and gentle wife, the mother of elephant, and this one, the god of war. And Kali, a fierce goddess who fights demons for a living, or for eternity, however you want to look at it. So we've got all of these different gods. If you were to go, we'll talk about worship a little bit later. If you were to go to a Hindu temple, you might find any or all of these, in addition to the first 3, represented in a temple. One of my classes in seminary was comparative world religions, and there was a Hindu temple in North Carolina, Raleigh, North Carolina. We went, and that's what it was. You walked in, and in the main kind of area I want to say it was kind of semicircular. It's been a long time. There was just everywhere different of these idols to these different gods, and in front of them were plates, there were sacrifices, there were candles. There were all, not sacrifices like animal sacrifices, but food typically. We didn't see any like slaughtered animals or that sort of thing. And then off to the side, he took us to a little library, and he was very happy to show us that in their library they had the Bible, because that's fine too. So it's hard in some ways to get a handle on Hinduism, because it's not quite anything goes, but it's sort of like, if it works for you and makes you a better person, have at it. Now, it's an old religion. When we talk about their sacred writings, we'll talk about what we think are some of the oldest texts written in the Indo-European languages. So we're talking 1500 BC. We've got, and maybe even earlier, some of these things. So old, way before Islam, like we were just talking about, certainly before Christianity. Contemporary with some of the elements of Judaism. For reference, 1500 BC is when we're thinking some of their texts were written. David Solomon is about 1000 BC. So that kind of gives you an idea in Jewish history versus, and even though India is not that far from the Middle East, in 1500 BC to 1000 BC, that's really a long way.
It would be a long donkey ride, absolutely.
There's not a lot of mass communication. There's not a lot of overlap, especially, we've got rivers and mountains that isolate, particularly India. And when we talked about the land of Israel, we know it has its own unique features that make it such a pivotal piece of land. So because of all this, it's kind of hard to do. And now it's not quite, what I don't want you to hear is that in Hinduism, it's kind of like the ancient Near Eastern religions where there's a god or goddess for anything you need. Like if you need fertility, you go to this god. If you need rain, you go to this god or goddess. If you need victory. Some of these have kind of those ideas, but typically in the Hindu faith, you pick one and you stick with it. If you go to the temple, there might be a bunch of them, but you probably have in your home a shrine to one that you devote yourself to and have some sort of small maybe not whole rooms, it could be very small, it could be just a bookcase or something. And that most of their worship is private at home with these small shrines to a particular god or goddess. Now, that might be informed by, for instance, you have a young family that wants to have a lot of children. Well, let's get the fertility goddess. That's the one we want because that's what we want. And we have crops that we want to come out. So we're going to focus there. Maybe you're in a place where there's constant conflict. Well, let's pick the warrior god or goddess. And that's the one we're going to worship because that might inform how you pick your god or goddess. But typically you kind of stick with one. From what I understand, there may be at times some shuffling. But because of this, when we get into the other things, it's hard at times, like when we say moral code, there's no 10 commandments. There's no, this is the way you live. Now, there's some things we'll talk about, but we got, some of their writings, which we're going to talk about next, really come before there are even moral codes, are at the beginning of the time when, these kind of codification of moral laws are coming. So even in the historical setting, we have issues with that. So any questions about gods, goddesses, or otherwise of Hinduism? Okay, then let's move along to their sacred writings. The oldest of them are called the Vedas. Veda means knowledge, literally, that's what it means. And so these are their things. There are two types of sacred, I say, writings. And the first thing I'm going to tell you is the Vedas are under a category that's Shruti, which is that which is heard. Because as we said with the Hebrew Bible, as we say with any ancient faith, you're not talking about easily accessible writing utensils and mass production of these things. You're talking about oral tradition. So the Vedas belong to this tradition. That's what is heard. They are written down. There are copies of them. They have been circulated over time, of course. But ultimately, the type of tradition is what is heard. The other type we'll talk about is what is remembered. And what is heard is more important than what is remembered in their kind of hierarchy of sacred writings. The Vedas are thought to have always been in existence. It was only when some, I guess you would say, mystics, some Hindus in a profoundly deep state, meditative state of mind, had this revealed to them. And that's the 1500 BC, where Brahma supposedly dictated to these sages the content of the Vedas. So they have a very high view of the Vedas. By the way, this sounds a little bit like Muhammad and the Quran, that the angel Gabriel kind of showed him this, which would make sense because a lot of religions somehow tie their sacred scriptures to direction from God. That sounds like Moses goes up on the mountain and he gets the law, right? God gives him this. So that's not a surprise that sacred scriptures would somehow be thought to be closely tied, in this case, to the chief of the deities, Brahma. There are 4 Vedas. The first one is the Rig Veda. I don't know why it's called the Rig Veda. It is a book of mantras. It is the oldest. It is the most important of them. It's a compilation of what you might call hymns, some sort of poetic stanzas to them, about 1,000 songs in them. There's 10,600 stanzas in those 1,000 songs, and each stanza has 8 chapters. I don't know how long a chapter is. These are just the words they use. It's so, you think 10,000 stanzas of 8 chapters. We're not talking about a Dan Brown book or a John Grisham book or a chapter in the Bible. That's 8 of those to make one stanza, and there's 10,000. They're shorter, but nonetheless. There's also information on culture and what we would call mythology, which would make sense when you've got all of these gods and goddesses intermarrying and having children and having avatars that have different perspectives. We would see that even in Greek or Roman mythology, same kind of idea there. The second of the Vedas is called the Sama Veda. The Sama Veda is basically the same as the Rig Veda, just shorter. Like some of the exact same hymns in the Rig Veda are in the Sama Veda, but it's much more condensed. And so that's this particular one, the Sama Veda, is used in ritualistic things for the Hindus. These are kind of the melodies out of the 1,000 songs in the Rig Veda that are narrowed down. Do I have a number there? I don't have a number there. That are narrowed down to these chants and things that are used ritualistically in the Hindu faith. So content is the same, exact same, just shorter. This is all of them. This is the ones we're going to use more regularly in our different times of worship. The third one is the Jaeger Veda. I don't know if that's how you say it. Got, Jägermeister, and it's probably not the best way to look at it in my brain. But nonetheless, that's how I looked at that. That's what made me pronounce it that way. This is mostly, it's a book of ritual. It's very similar to the Egyptian Book of the Dead, which is, Egyptian Book of the Dead is not necessarily a dark book, but it's just a book of ritual for religious ceremonies, almost liturgical that in its composition. And the last one is the Atharva Veda. It's called the Book of Spells. So songs, charms, spells against disease, danger, enemies, sorcerers. There's also in this one rites of marriage or funerals. So spells in the sense of, not in the sense of a magician or that sort of thing, but in the sense of incantations or certain, spells, kind of. They're not waving a wand and casting them, but they're meant to convey certain religious properties, even and including things like weddings and funerals. So 4 Vedas, you can see we've got some practical uses in them. That even though these are ancient texts, that they are somewhat designed particularly for use. We think about like the Bible. We've got history in there. We've got songs and hymns in there. But we don't have what I would think, like particularly this last one, there's not a marriage ceremony in the Bible that if you're going to be married as a person of faith, you use this ceremony out of, First Matrimony, chapter 3, or whatever it is. We use verses from the Bible to inform, and we use them in marriage ceremonies. But this is more, here's how you do it. So a little different, a very, very targeted to the practice at times of their faith. Now, on top of having 4 Vedas, each Veda has 4 sections. 4 is a magic number for them. The first section of a Veda is the Samhita. It's the oldest part. It's the blessings, prayers, songs, praises to God. They also incorporate what's called a Brahmana, which is describing the text itself. So kind of like notes on how to use the text, which is interesting. So the first section is that. It's the oldest section. After that comes the Aranyakas, I guess. This is more the ritualistic part of each Veda. If you're looking for something to perform a ritual, to know what to do, you're going to go to this section. The third part is the Brahmana, more ritualistic teachings. But these are more poetic. These are more prose that explain the use of the poetry in the Arya, whatever. And then there's the Upanishads. You've heard of those. Some people think of those as a separate kind of a thing, but they're actually a part of the Vedas. These are the mystical, philosophical parts of the Vedas. It talks about the nature of the soul, the nature of the universal soul. It mentions transmigration of the soul and the things that are involved in that, which is kind of uniting your soul with the eternal soul of Brahman. So the Vedas are pretty complex, but also rather practical. I didn't make a note, as we did with some of the other things, how long these are. But back to here. This is the 1500 BC. All of these come a little bit later. we're talking still by about 700 BC, we've got everything in this section that's kind of done. So that's the Vedas. Those are the ones that are spoken, right? So that the word, heard, excuse me, the things that are heard. So this is the oral tradition. It has been written down. The other writings, there's a lot of these other writings, I'm not going to cover all of them, are called the Smriti, which is that which is remembered. These are the legendary tales. Like these are the epics of Hinduism that tell the story. Not, I guess in some ways, like the historical books of our scripture that they want to lay out this history and background a little bit more. Some of them are called the Puranas, not to be confused with the toothy fish. They contain a narrative of history from creation to destruction, genealogies of kings, heroes, the cosmology. There's 17 or 18 of these, and typically they're named after one of the three main deities, Brahma, Vishnu, or Shiva. So they're Puranas that are related to Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. You can see creation, destruction, all of that in there, preserving it. So those are things. Now that we have these next two these are kind of epic poems. Like think Epic of Gilgamesh, Beowulf, only ancient Indian epic poems. The Ramayana and the Mahabharata. You may have heard of those. I'm sure you've heard of this one, the Bhagavad Gita. This is the one that, of all of these, I'd heard of the Vedas, I remember that, but Bhagavad Gita, I'm like, aha, I remember hearing about that. That literally means the song of the Lord, and it is a dialogue between a prince and Krishna. So the reason we know about the Bhagavad Gita is because Krishna is probably one of the more prominent forms of Hinduism that had a heyday in the US and still exists in the US. And I'm guessing that's why it's in our minds. But this is, kind of one of those tales of a warrior talking to Krishna about what it means to be in battle, two branches of the royal family and how that all got sorted out. Krishna is teaching this warrior that his duty, according to his class, is to go and to do what he needs to do in battle. So it's a fascinating thing. So this stuff is kind of more what we would think myth and legend tales, heroic tales of the different gods or goddesses of what's this religion again? Hinduism. That's what it is.
That's where we started. Yeah.
I could talk about more text, but this kind of gives you an idea. Vedas are the most important. These others kind of tell the story. But again, it's kind of like when you have so many gods and goddesses and so many texts, it's like it just kind of opens the door. You can just keep going. Well, the elephants and gods and the monkey god and the demon killing god and this god and that goddess and let's just add another one. What does it matter? And if we haven't had another one, we need another story about him. And so we have more text. And so they just kind of build from there. Questions before we move on?
No.
Online, how are we doing?
We might not be able to hear them, we can turn them down.
Any questions on? Yeah, I turned them all off.
When you turn them all off, they can't respond.
They can't
I see
talk.
no hands. Did you have one, Joel? I see you.
No, we're good.
Okay, good deal. I'll go back here then.
Well, what you hear in this country is just Krishna. And that's the term I've heard through college.
Holy Krishna.
And the Bhagavad Gita. And but this is so immense. You've opened up
Krishna
large.
is this to Hinduism.
Oh my gosh, you've opened up a wide door. I didn't know it was so involved.
Well, I mean, I'm sure there's a way to do it, but
Presenting your,
let's just go back to the map. 1500 BC,
yeah.
massive subcontinent. Today, we have missionaries, SBC missionaries there. They've corresponded with us. last year gave us a Lottie Moon greeting. I don't know where they are, but even there, they're telling us there's all these people groups. There's these major, even today, 2024 in India, it's not India and everybody's the same. There's this people group and that people group and this language family and that language family. Very diverse, very divided. And so out of that, you've got a very diverse, very divided, maybe not divided is the right thing. In fact, that's what many speculate this idea of the Trinity, or the Trimurti of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva is a way to bring under one umbrella these various competing factions and trying to make some sense of symmetry or order to it. Say, hey, we're all on the same team here. Let's not get too caught up. So even today, India is not a cohesive, everybody talks to everybody, and culturally a singular entity. It's very vast. It's not linguistically unique or singular. I guess you would
Totally agree.
bear witness to that, having lived there for a decade or two.
Interesting.
Okay, where are we? We did all this. Where are we? Oh, yes.
When I was there, it was a lot better than it is now. So,
What do you mean?
as far as the cohesiveness of
Oh, really?
now, it's even more.
Divisive.
Yeah, well, there you go. That's a good word. But
I'll have to, for next week, because we'll be doing more of this, maybe I'll look at some of our correspondence with this missionary couple.
I mean,
And see.
it was, even for us being accepted as Christians there now, I mean, even like you said, in one sense, they're very welcoming to any religion. I mean, anytime I've tried to witness to a Hindu, it's like, oh, that's great, that's great, that's great, because they're almost harder to witness to than a Muslim in the sense of reaching them, not in the violence or the fear of the,
Right.
but now it's, I have friends that are missionaries over there that, most of the missionaries that I know that have gone there now go under agriculture or whatever and work under the umbrella of another, they do not go over there as preachers or missionaries. They're not accepted at all.
Yeah. And there are large parts of the world where you have to bring a skill to bear.
And of course, some areas are worse than others, but it's by the time we left, it was getting bad, and we don't have very many missionaries over there anymore that are, I don't think as far as, I don't know the Baptists, but I mean, we were under an alliance, so, and even now, I don't think there's that many over there that are under some kind of pretense, if you will.
I will see if I still have what Micah and Josh had sent. Because they asked us they sent X number of people groups or language groups and said, we're asking people to take one of these and pray for them, that the gospel can get in. I think they're not even looking at the whole country. They're just looking at kind of a region.
They just took a small area.
Yeah. So it's very much diverse. And to your point, Joyce, that was an interesting observation about witnessing. Like, it's not hard to witness because they're open to whatever. Yeah. Anything kind of goes. Exactly. If that's your God, happy for you. But it's difficult to witness because they don't see any reason. If that's for you, great. I have my God. You have your God.
There's no concept of like English with the Muslim, they have a concept of sin and that whole idea that we need a God to, they do, but it's a totally different. We'll get into that, I'm sure, more, but
next week.
Yeah.
Moral code.
Yeah, there you go. It was a challenge. It was a real hard challenge for my friends. Yeah,
salvation is, like we would think of a concept, is not anywhere near and let's be honest, we're Western, they're Eastern.
Yeah.
That in and of itself is difficult for Westerners to understand an Eastern mindset. But ritual acts, I only have 10. These aren't like the 5 pillars of Islam, in the sense that if you're Islamic, you're going to do those 5 things. You're going to make the confession. You're going to pray 5 times a day. You're going to give your alms. You're going to make you are going to absolutely do those 5 things, or you're not a good Muslim. These ritual acts are much more fluid. I know that seems to be kind of the motto here. It's like, yeah, if it works for you, you should do it. But it's not like, to be a good Hindu, this is what these are typically things Hindus probably do, but not, again, Muslim, do these or else. First one, I'm going to give you their words. Bhakti just means devotion. So this is, in their mind, pick your God and be devoted to that God. That's what this means. There's not one that's better than another. Pick your God and be devoted to that God. There are certain rituals that you might go through to express that devotion. You likely have some sort of, as I said before, a personal or household shrine recognizing that God, and your devotion could take a lot of ways. But this is an interesting one. We haven't gotten to the caste system yet, which comes out of the Vedas. But this one's open to anybody. Anybody can offer devotion or bhakti to their God. To be distinguished from puja, unless they're Spanish puja, I don't know, which means puja, which means worship. So this is, devotion and worship in my mind are pretty similar. In Hinduism, they're somewhat different. Bhakti is less tangible.
Puja, when they go to the temple, they go to do their puja.
So what you got? Add more.
It's, well, if they go and they offer their sacrifices, or they bow to their God, or they put all their stuff on there, they're doing their puja.
Okay. So this is going to be more communal.
Yeah.
But not really communal. It's not.
Or outwardly. So they can be seen.
Right. You're going to the temple, but like when we come to a Christian church, we're going to sing together. We're going to listen to the pastor preach, and typical. So that's not what's happening there. Yeah. If you go to the mosque, you're going to pray. You're going to bow on your prayer mat, and on Friday there'll be some sort of a sermon together. That's not it. You can go in there, and you don't go around the circle and make a sacrifice necessarily to all the gods. You offer your worship, your puja, to whatever particular deity, and that, depending on it, could be bringing some food. Ghee apparently is a big deal over there, from what I'm reading. I don't know if that's something that.
Ghee is a big deal over there, but I never really knew about it as far as what.
Yes,
I really paid too much attention to what they gave to their gods.
Flowers.
Flowers.
Definitely flowers. Definitely food. I don't know. I didn't see this, but my thought is, I wonder. It's kind of like you leave cookies out for Santa, and they're gone in the morning because Santa ate them. I wonder if that's any, is that what the priest gets? That's like their meal. You bring the food, and when nobody's looking, they take it in the back.
Yeah, that's very possible. But I'm sure there was some of that. There had to be some of that. I always wondered that myself.
That I actually tried to search that particular thing and read it, and I couldn't find anything like, because the Jewish priests, they were granted a portion of the sacrifice. That was their wages, how they got fed, right? They didn't have farms and grew things like others. They received it. I didn't know if that's maybe how the priests there. So worship, different than devotion. Let's see. The next one is yajna, which is a sacrifice, a fire sacrifice. That sounds wrong. Oh, this is where ghee is. Okay. Symbolic materials, ghee, grain, incense are thrown into a fire pit. This is usually facilitated by a priest, but doesn't always have to be. So again, these 3 things kind of sound like they're the same, but they're differentiated a little bit in Hinduism, and it might be, you might do one or none of them, depending. Mantra, this one, this is that term, that sentence, that phrase that would be repeated as a ritual. And some of it might be dependent upon a particular god or goddess that you are offering your bhakti to, or your puja to, or whatever is going on there. And then we get this wonderful word in English, grace, prasada. Grace is what is returned to the offerer. This is the only thing I found about what happens to the food. You bring your food offering to the god or goddess in your worship, and part of it is thought to be blessed and returned to you. That's the grace that's conferred upon me, that I get to take that home and eat it and share it with my family, I guess. So interesting. You can see the idea of grace a little bit in our Christian understanding. But that's kind of there. Number 6 is seva, or service. This is the one that makes the most sense. Respectful attention to someone's needs, acknowledging that there's divine in everybody. Brahma, the spirit of Brahma, at the core of every human is a piece of the creator, Brahma, that makes you worthwhile, that you're seeking to eventually reunite with in full. And so service is what can be offered. And because of the belief in reincarnation, serving humans or animals is equally important, because you don't know. That could be Todd. You might be Todd now, but
Never know.
it could be a horse or.
Well, you never know if that was your uncle so you got to be kind, because you might be being mean to your own grandfather or something.
Service can also have to do not just with people, but with idols. You might need to bathe your deity, might need to clean whatever. So those are also acts of service that can be offered. What are we on? How about this one? This one's going to get you excited. Astrology. What in the world are we going? I read that. I said, what is that? This is sort of what it sounds like to us. And I don't know how to say that word. So
I don't know.
I'll just leave it.
I think you're doing pretty good with all the words you've taught.
The J is probably silent.
But if it,
Lotisa, probably.
that would make sense.
I'm guessing. I honestly don't know that word. But I would go with Lotisa.
The OTC is the astrologer, as it were, that you would consult to find the right times for certain things to happen. Like if you're planning a wedding, you want to get with this person that does this to make sure when you plan that wedding, it's in the right season, it's in the right date. Is it related to, the astral movements? What I have, my brief little notes on it aren't there, but probably I can't imagine that it wouldn't be, because most of this sort of thing would tie itself to seasons and movements of planets and stars. So this is something that I've got an important thing coming up. I need to know when's the right time to do it. It might be, when should I plant my crops? What crop should I plant? When should I give my daughter in marriage? Whatever. Number 8, samskara. These are rites that have to do with certain moments. Life cycle rituals is what I put there. So there's a ritual related to conception and menstruation. There's one for birthing a male child. There's one for birthing a female child. There's one that is called parting of the hair, that has to do with delivery of your baby. There's one that commemorates the naming of the child's first outing in public, the child's first time eating solid food. So on, I got 2 pages of these words. And so this is something that would be a lot of it revolving around, the life cycle of your offspring all the way to a funeral. Which probably goes back to the parent, but there are all of these rituals, all of these rites that go with certain things. Hindus also have pilgrimage. Now, they don't have a particular site to go to, like Islamic people go to Mecca or Medina. A pilgrimage could be visiting your family in another city. You have to, or visiting a major shrine to the god or goddess that is your family or that you've offered your bhakti to.
Did you have anything about the Ganges River?
It could be, I was about to say, to go to the Ganges River.
There you go. That was a big one. That was one that we saw a lot of. And if you actually bathe in the Ganges River,
Now, is that the river
your sins.
is that the river you pointed out? That runs
No,
north?
that was the Indus River.
Right, that's what I thought you said.
So we can go back, way back. I
Because that river runs all the way up to the
I
mountain.
think it's on that map. It's gonna take a while.
I was going to ask you that at the end, but it's right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, there.
What's the name of the mountains that run across the north? The
Himalayas.
Himalayas, and they are the biggest ones in the world.
They are pretty big.
They're tall. That's the biggest
Mount
mountain.
Everest there's Nepal and
Yeah,
Tibet.
they're the biggest ones. And they isolate India
Sorry,
from the
guys.
rest of the continent. And then, of course, the river runs across the north there. And so that's not the Hindu. Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is, it's part of China.
Southern China.
No, I think this is the area where planes don't fly.
Yeah,
They go around it.
I think you're right. Because
It's a very high plateau
uh-huh.
and there's no cities there. So if you have any problems, the first thing you do if you're flying and you have an oxygen problem, you have to get down to 10,000 feet. How tall is Everest? It's higher than 10,000. You don't want to get down when the mountains are 15, 12, 14,000 feet around. Anyway.
The elevation is amazing.
Yeah, so
But
it's a very isolating feature.
now you can see that India is completely isolated from the rest of the country.
So these pilgrimages, there's a way I can just push the number, but I don't have any.
I think you're doing pretty good.
I'm working out.
You're working out your thumbs.
My thumb's gonna,
Teach you play guitar
There it
if
is.
you want.
the pilgrimages aren't singular. Probably the most important are the river pilgrimages to wash in the Ganges. And also the Yamuna River, is that one that you remember is apparently another one people make
What was the
pilgrimages
other
to. Yamuna, Yamuna. Millions of pilgrims go to those rivers.
Okay.
We always hear about the Ganges.
The Ganges is the big one. And of course, what would Hinduism be without, you might want to guess number 10. You think Hindu, you think
Oh, yeah.
yoga.
Should have known that.
I guess so.
Yoga.
I should have.
Wide variety of practices. The most popular, the ones that we probably know are the ones that talk about their channels in your anatomy that you have to kind of get everything aligned. Chakras, you've heard, get your chakras aligned and that sort of thing. It's called Hatha yoga. But meditative practice is probably the bigger idea under yoga. Most Hindus will engage in some sort of meditative practice, lotus position, different positions in that are thought to somehow align them with whatever. That the idea that the Vedas came from meditation, that the quickest way to connect to the deity Brahma or whoever is through these deep meditative practices. So this would be something that they would often engage in. Sometimes people ask, should Christians do yoga? And I would say, my answer to a lot of things, well, it really depends. What do you mean? Are you doing the yoga like it's flexibility, it's stretching? Probably fine. Are you chanting mantras and saying things that you don't know? And maybe you might want to
We
be
don't
careful.
associate yoga with the chantings. We just
Right.
associate yoga with exercise.
Right.
At least that's what now you've just educated me.
Yeah, sadly, my sister's daughter-in-law is a yoga instructor, and she has the on tattooed on her chest. When I first saw her having tattooed that, I just about flipped my gourd, but she claims, I mean, but it's just such a tug that I see in her life, trying to live out that and be, but still trying to be a Christian. And I can see it tearing in her heart
Right.
for some of the decisions that she's making right now, that I can see how that is, it's a powerful thing. When you get into the depths of that, how it can take you down the road that you want to go down.
I would say yes. And
Yeah.
that's, I know Christians that practice yoga.
Resistant to yoga as far as even an exercise, because I didn't want to, even namaste we said namaste all the time, but even that now it gives me a chill, because it's like, it doesn't take much for evil to get in our lives, and I don't want to invite it. So, but I know I can get a little carried away with that, but but when I see it in her life and how she's struggling with it, especially after she put that tattoo on, it was just like, girl, what are you doing? But anyway, so
Right.
yeah, I can see that it's a tough.
Yes, it can open you to influences that would be better not to open yourself to. But I also know Christians who practice yoga and use it to spend time in prayer with God.
It's an excellent exercise.
I can't do those things.
It was exercise, that's all I thought.
Yeah.
But this is, you've opened up quite a door. I didn't know this was so, this religion was so complicated.
So this is the thing. I'm acting like it's very complicated, but you shouldn't see this as a list of requirements as much as you see it as a multiple choice test. You want to do yoga? Great. You don't want to do yoga? Fine. You want to consult? Good. You don't want to? That's fine too.
That's right. Okay, so if it rains on your wedding, you should have done it. So guess what?
They choose their own
Yeah.
little niche of what they want to worship, and you already said that. But you've done a wonderful job of presenting all this information. Thank you.
Well, I'm worried because I present a lot of information.
It's very,
and I don't know if I'm synthesizing it or if you leave here going, so.
Well, it's a lot of information to absorb in one blow. But
The mind can only absorb what the seat can endure.
absolutely.
And so I think your seats are done enduring.
Absolutely.
So in fact, my mind is done too, because that was my last thing.
That was very encompassing. Thank you.
Yeah.
So next time we'll look at the next 3 of our 6 things: moral code, worldview, and social order. Throw in some things.
Yeah, caste system was a joy.
Yeah.
Are you going to end up in the religions of, say, Japan?
Sure.
Also, because I know they're just as involved as this is, and with their own.
So we'll probably do
World.
after this. We'll likely do Buddhism.
Okay.
We'll do some Eastern religions because there's some similarities and some differences. For instance, Buddhism, the idea of a god doesn't really apply. So it's not a deific religion. But anyway,
this is fascinating. It's so deep. I didn't realize it was.
it is the thing that it occurs to me as I'm going through this is, one, the human desire to find something to worship.
Mm-hmm.
There's something inside of every human everywhere that's looking, and the human creativity to come up with stuff is also kind of remarkable.
Very interesting way to put
And
it.
then it just makes me grateful that somewhere along the line, not because of anything I did, I happen to be, if I was born in India,
Yeah.
I would be
Exactly.
99% likely, because
Exactly.
So
now maybe not God in his grace
Absolutely.
reaches down. This missionary couple, Josh and Micah, who I'll tell you more about next week because I'm going to look into that. They're seeing people's lives transformed by the gospel regularly. They're starting, I think they've started in this year, I want to say 4 like house churches, not like,
Oh, wow.
which is amazing. And they have, one of them is in one of those different language or people groups. So, I could have been born in India, raised a Hindu, but God can still reach out. Just like we said with the Muslims, you can be born in Islam country, raised in it, and then you can have a dream that turns your whole life upside down.
Exactly.
And then you're on a different track. So any comments from the online crowd?
you turn them on, bro.
Nope. Thank you. We're okay.
You're okay?
Yeah.
Okay then.
Isla Murat is okay.
Good. 2 out of 3. Julianne is. It's good. We lost a couple along the way. All right. Well, I'm going to pray so we can call it an evening. Hopefully it's not raining. I can't tell what I'm hearing. It might be raining, dripping inside. Father, we thank you for the grace that you've extended us through Jesus. We thank you, even as we were just talking about that fact that in our lives, somehow we encountered you. And we know that's your sovereignty. We know that's your goodness. We know that's your grace reaching out and calling us to yourself and convicting us and adopting us as your children through faith. Thank you for that precious gift. And Lord, as we talk about these other faiths and see the variety of ways humanity throughout history has come up with ways to search to fill the emptiness in all of our souls that comes from being created in your image and longing to have that relationship with the God who created us, Lord, help us to give a greater sensitivity, a greater understanding, and a greater love for those around the world who are lost. You've called us in the Great Commission to go into all the world. And I thank you for people like Josh and Micah and other missionaries that are in places like India, sharing the gospel and for how you're using them. And I pray, Lord, we'd be encouraged by the fact that you are at work around the world. Father, as we leave tonight, as we go to our homes, as we have the rest of this week before us, we pray for your guidance, for your protection, for your provision in everything we do. May we live in a way that brings glory to your name. And we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.